All right. So our plan for today is to discuss what's called the addition property of equality. All right. All this is pretty much one of our first methods of actually solving an equation. All right. So this is called the addition property of equality. And our main goal, as you see there, all capital letters, stars around it, is to get the variable by itself, right? When we solve, right, we're solving for a number that we could plug in for that variable that will give us the final answer. All right. And there's different strategies that we can take to use them. The first one that we're going to see here is when we have a two-step equation. And our objective to get the variable by itself is to use what's called the addition property of equality. All right. The first thing that we need to do, all right, this first blank here that I'm kind of just leaving, is to get rid of any addition and subtraction. And I'm just going to use the symbols to kind of go in place of addition, subtraction, right? Instead of writing everything out. So my first objective to get the variable by itself, get rid of any addition and subtraction that we have, right? So if I take a look at that left-hand side of the equal sign, right? If I'm getting rid of addition and subtraction, that means that I'm trying to move something that's being added or subtracted to the variable. Well, what number is being added to the variable right now? 10, right? So I have plus 10 over here, all right? In order to get rid of it, I want to make that a 0. Well, 10 plus what number gives me 0? What can I take? What should I take away from 10 to get 0? 10, right? Seems simple enough. So I'm going to subtract both sides by 10. Whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other. All right. And that's on the other side of this equal sign. Some people draw a line to kind of, separate either sign. I'm fine with you doing that as well. So my first goal, get rid of any addition and subtraction. Well, what's 10 minus 10 going to give me? What was my whole point in doing that? 0, right? Is to just get rid of any number on this side. So 10 minus 10 gives me 0. I'll cross those out. And I'm left with negative x equals, what's 12 minus 10? 2. Good. Any questions so far? Everybody good? My second step after I get rid of any addition and subtraction would then to just be divide by -1, right? Notice that this is negative x. What's technically the number in front of x? Even though we don't write it, 1, right? So this is -1 times x. Well, I want x to be by itself. I don't want any negatives or any numbers in front of that either. I'm trying to get the variable entirely alone. So my second step is to divide both sides by -1. Now, as we progress through, the equation is not always going to have a -1 in front of my variable. Sometimes it might be a different number, okay? But for right now, in all of our examples, we're going to take that second step to divide both sides by -1, all right? My reason for doing that, so if I divide this side by -1 and this side by -1, I'm achieving my objective of getting x by itself, because what's -1 divided by -1? What's a negative divided by a negative? Positive. What's 1 divided by 1? 1, right? So this is really 1x, which is what I want. What's 2 divided by -1? What's a positive divided by a negative give me? A negative. And what's 2 divided by 1? What's anything divided by 1? Not 1. 2, right? Just itself. So I have -2. Okay. Any questions about that first example? So I'm trying to get the variable by itself. I get rid of addition and subtraction. Then I divide by -1 on both sides. Essentially, when you divide by -1, all it does is change the sign of whatever that number is, right? It stays the same, just change the sign. Now, a way for you to check your answer would be to take that -2, plug it back into the original equation. So let's think about this logically, right? -2 is just +2. What's 2 plus 10? 12, and I have 12 on both sides, so I know that this is the correct answer, right? We kind of did that when we were going through with our solutions yesterday, right? If we had the same thing on either side, it was my right answer, right? Remember we talked about that in class? So that's the same thing when we check our answers here. I have x equals -2. Well, if I plug that back in and I get something that's the same on either side, that's my final answer. Okay. Any questions about that first example? Okay. Let's do another example. What if I have 24 minus x equals 14? Okay. 24 minus x equals 14. Well, the first thing I need to do is get rid of any addition or subtraction. What's the other term that's with my variable right now? So I have this x. My goal is to get that by itself. What else is being added or subtracted on this side? 24, right? I have a positive 24. Well, how do I move the positive 24 to the other side? What do I have to do to get rid of 24? Think back to what I did in the first example. So I have a positive 24. I want that to become 0. What do I have to take away from 24 to get to 0? 24, right, itself. So I'm going to subtract 24 on both sides. All you're doing is taking that other term and subtracting that entire quantity from it. Okay? Because what's 24 minus 24? 0. And what's going to be left over here? The x, right? The negative x. So these terms cancel. I have negative x equals, what's 14 minus 24? This is our integer rules again. Negative 10. Good. Nice job. Okay. Any questions so far? So you're just eliminating this on this side, but you have to take that and put it on the other side. Whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other. Well, my second step is to divide both sides by -1. Anytime that I do that, right, negative x divided by -1, what's that going to leave me with? Just +1, right? So positive x. What's negative 10 divided by -1? What's a negative divided by a negative? Positive. And what's 10 divided by 1? 10. Right? Again, all I'm doing is changing really the sign of whatever that original number was. So I have x equals 10. Any questions about that example? Again, to check your answer, if you do 24 minus 10, what do you get? What's 24 minus 10? 14. Don't I have 14 on both sides if I plug 10 in? So that is my solution, right? It's just another way for us to check. Let's go through one more example. Okay. I have negative x plus 11 equals 22. Negative x plus 11 equals 22. What's the first thing that I need to do? What's my first step? What's that? Right, so get rid of any addition or subtraction. Good. So I'm trying to get the variable by itself. What's being added or subtracted to x right now? Am I head in the way? What's that? I can't hear you. It's not that you're not saying the right thing. It's that you can't, you're talking very slightly. What am I adding or subtracting to x right now? 11. Okay, good. Well, I have a positive 11. How do I get from 11 to 0? What do I have to take away from 11? 11, right? So what do I have to do on both sides then? Subtract 11, right? You do the opposite sign of that number, but I have to do it on both sides. Well, what's 11 minus 11? 0, right? Those are going to cancel. That's always going to be my first step. What's left over on this side of my equal sign? Negative x. What's that? Negative x. What were you saying on the right-hand side? What's 22 minus 11? 11, good. Okay. Any questions so far? Well, I have negative x equals 11. What's my second step in each of these problems? What do I have to do? Divide by negative 1 to get x by itself, right? And what's 11 divided by negative 1? Negative 11, right? Good. The number stays the same. I just change the sign, and my answer is negative 11. We're solving equations. We're actually going through and solving now. We're taking the steps forward. From before, we were kind of understanding, well, how do terms combine and how do I use certain properties? Well, now we're actually solving certain equations, right? We're not just looking at solutions, but we're finding them. Again, if you were to plug in negative 11, well, negative 11, that's a double negative. They cancel out. 11 plus 11 is what? It's 11 plus 11, 22, and 22 I would have on both sides. So I know that that's my solution, right? It's a way for us to check our answers. And I would suggest that after each problem, you check them, okay? Any questions about anything that we covered today? Any of the examples that we did in class? Everybody good? Okay. So